Everyone and their mum are making Battlefield 6 multiplayer videos right now, and let's be honest, it's good. We all know it's good. It has amazing gunplay, it has amazing vehicles, it has maps. The most impressive thing to me is how the developers managed to invent a time machine, travel back in time, kidnap Adolf Hitler, and give him the job of designing all the challenges. You gotta have genuine malice in your heart to come up with some of these Herculean crimes against humanity. And they found the right guy for the job. But despite all this, I know for a fact you guys haven't played the campaign. The stats don't lie. To properly understand Battlefield 6's campaign, we've got to look at the game's development. So it's 2021 and Battlefield 2042 just released. The players don't like it because it deviates too much from what they like about Battlefield. The devs don't like it because they were supposedly 6 months away from actually finishing it. And EA's leadership didn't like it because it didn't sell as much as they wanted. So they went back to the drawing board. The higher ups were looking at Call of Duty, Fortnite, Overwatch, all these other shooters making billions of dollars, and they wanted that for Battlefield. So they went big, really big. They got the former general manager of Call of Duty, the co-creator of Halo, and Vince Zampella, who's basically shooter Jesus. The dude co-founded the studios that made Call of Duty, Titanfall, and Apex. Zampella could fix Concord if he wanted to. A big challenge for EA is that making a shooter isn't as simple as it once was. When Infinity Ward made the original Modern Warfare, they had one poorly lit office and around 100 employees. Even then, it only took them 2 years. Today, that's all changed. Investors love the idea of releasing the next live service money printer, but in the shooter space, that's a vicious marketplace. Instead of each EA studio working on their own games, they'd be pulled together to make their own segment of Battlefield 6. Ripple Effect would do the Battle Royale, DICE would do the multiplayer, that kind of thing. This is where we get to the problems, because having 5 studios all over the world makes managing the project a pain in the ass, especially the campaign. See, the campaign was initially developed by Ridgeline Games, but unlike other studios like DICE or Motive, they weren't set up for this shit. They'd never released a shooter before. Hell, they'd never released a game before. This studio was only thrown together at the tail end of 2022, and developers there reported that they were chronically understaffed and underfunded. And honestly, from EA's perspective, do you want your A-team on your multiplayer money printer, or a campaign that 10% of players might be bothered to play? Anyway, Ridgeline fell under the radar, and the team quickly struggled with severe morale issues. Devs were getting burnt out, and many were freaking out from the insane targets set by the executives. I mean, these guys wanted 100 million players when their previous best-selling Battlefield game only just cracked 30. One insider source even said, quote, "Nothing in the market research or our quality deliverables indicates that we would be anywhere near that." Apparently there were also some cultural issues stemming from DICE being a Swedish studio. According to insiders, the European game devs tended to be more focused on making something good rather than hitting financial targets. I was a bit skeptical about this point, so I look back on the last 10 years of Game of the Year winners, and I think the stereotype might be true. We have 4 games from Japan, 3 from Europe, and 3 from the United States. But you take out the ones that were published by Japanese companies, and the only game made and published in the US is Overwatch. And let's be honest, Overwatch is a unicorn. Multiplayer games don't win these things, and arguably it took Blizzard 10 years to get it out the door. But I'm just talking shit at this point. EA is gonna be Saudi owned soon, so surely that will make the company better. Anyway, apparently reporting real progress within Ridgeline became a Soviet-style shitshow. Like, devs who raised concerns about how far behind they were would straight up be cut out of meetings. But just like the USSR, the wall had to fall eventually. When a milestone review came up, leadership came to understand just how far behind Ridgeline had become. And by February 2024, the studio was shuttered completely. The campaign was then picked up by Criterion, DICE, and Motive. But this was a tough pill to swallow. They were now 2 years into the game's 4-year development cycle, and supposedly nothing Ridgeline had made could be picked up and continued. They basically had to start the whole thing from scratch. I'm a bit of a shooter campaign connoisseur, as you'll eventually find out. I've done a ton of research into Call of Duty campaigns specifically, and the one common trait that all the bad ones share is this exact same kind of mismanagement. The Modern Warfare 3 reboot was dog shit, but that wasn't Sledgehammer's fault. The developers thought they were working on a DLC until a year before launch. You can't blame them for that. Like, everyone loved the Modern Warfare 1 reboot, but that had twice the budget and nearly 3 times the development time. A big fucking mystery that was better. One of my least favorite videos are comparisons of new games with older ones, because usually it's just used as an excuse to shit on something the creator doesn't like. Like, yeah, Star Wars Outlaws isn't as good as Red Dead 2, but it also had double the dev time, 4 times the manpower, and we're just coming off the most profitable entertainment product ever made. Context matters, because although in another timeline Battlefield 6 could have had a place on the Mount Rushmore of shooter campaigns, you can't expect that to happen under these pretty unfortunate circumstances. They were lacking time, experience, sanity, money, manpower, and maidens. It was a miracle we got anything at all. I just wanted to cut the devs some slack, because a lot of them got burnt out and run down trying to get this out on time. But anyway, let's actually jump in. So Battlefield 6 is set in 2027, and the world is in a state of instability. NATO, as we currently know it, has been eroded and fractured, and a private military company called Pax Armada has effectively started taking over countries. Already this is such a cool concept, but if you wanted to know which nations left NATO, or how Pax Armada became so strong, be prepared to die with that question, because you're not getting any answers here. In the multiplayer, we see that Pax Armada uses the Swedish Gripen fighter jet, so that's one confirmed country, I guess. I know the writing bar for shooter campaigns is pretty low, but I would've liked something. I guess most players wouldn't like finding out that their country are the bad guys. I expect the story was made to make the factions in multiplayer more balanced. NATO in real life is basically a fucking eldritch god compared to any other military alliance. And it also gives them an excuse not to lock weapons to each faction. In any case, NATO breaking up is conceivable. I mean, half the current members have considered it at one point or another, but who the fuck knows how we got to the point where Amazon is starting to take over countries. Anyway, the game starts in the Caucasus nation of Georgia, where a NATO base is being prepped to be peacefully handed over to Pax Armada. Although about 30 seconds into the mission, Pax just decides to attack anyway, and we'll get to that. So you start fighting your way out of the base before you eventually get to an on-rails turret section. The fact that this doesn't even hold a candle to the original Modern Warfare from 2007 is all you really need to know about it. The original team from Infinity Ward was basically the best in the business and had an extremely low turnover, which again was the complete opposite for this campaign. I'ma keep it real, I think the OG Modern Warfare trilogy is the best extended shooter campaign ever made, so that's where I'm setting the bar. You soon find out that Pax Armada are attacked because NATO has a huge stash of servers that contain really sensitive information. So you and your team make it their mission to get inside the server farm and blow it to Kingdom Come. I didn't really understand this part, because to clear the way there, you call in an airstrike on the people guarding the servers. But if you already had air support, why not just use that on the servers? And the strength of Pax Armada kinda seems inconsistent. Like, one of your squad mates is really surprised that someone sold them jets, which is an insane thing to hear. You're telling me they didn't have jets before this point? Like, what the fuck are you worried about? Like, NATO's whole military doctrine is just predicated on, haha, we have more jets than you. And not knowing they had jets in the first place would be an intelligence failure of biblical proportions. It would be like France trying to sell fighter jets to the Taliban. There is no amount of money on earth which would be worth the cock and ball torture ass sanctions you'd be hit with. But whatever. NATO is pretty heavily nerfed in this game. Anyway, you go through the server farm and plant the C4, and by the end of it, you start to realize that the entire campaign seems to be a very basic tutorial for the multiplayer. Like, everyone in your squad has dedicated roles, and you can even revive them in just the same way. My favorite thing is how the support is always giving you ammo bags like a little present, but they would always do it at the most inappropriate times. Like, thanks man, you shouldn't have. But this whole building is on fire. After you hold out long enough, you get evacuated by a helicopter. But it's almost a running joke in this game that all helicopters are destined to crash. The final portion of this mission is a last stand, where you see your team slowly get picked off one by one. I thought these guys were likable, but in my opinion, this scene isn't earned. We don't know anything about these guys. We don't know what's on the servers, and we don't even know anything about the war we're currently fighting. It's a heroic sacrifice, but I don't even know what it's for. Anyway, it's now a year later, and we learn that the Secretary General of NATO was assassinated, which caused a bunch of other NATO countries to flip and join packs. I'm pretty sure that the whole point of NATO is that you can't just do that. I mean, if you let some company openly kill the head of what's supposed to be the most powerful military alliance in human history, I don't know man, that's kind of on you. In the second mission, US and British forces decide to team up to take back Gibraltar from Pax Armada. But as for why, the game's kinda hazy on the details. I'm not sure if shooter campaigns are just really hard to write, or if the stories just come secondary to the gameplay. But either way, they always seem particularly hard to follow. But we jump out of an airplane, we do a little sniping, and at this point you might start to notice that some parts of the game are way more polished than others. Like there's this one part where they animated a team of 4 people using really impressive teamwork to get over a ledge. Like the whole thing is an amazing section that goes on for nearly a full minute, and most players will probably never see it. I gotta imagine this was something they salvaged from the first 2 years of development, because there's no fucking way they'd make this on a time crunch. Continuing on, and a lot of this mission is just moving somewhere, providing sniper overwatch, then moving somewhere else. They're lucky the gunplay feels so good here, because aside from that, there really isn't much to write home about. Like if this was me, I'd be like, my dearest Josephine, there is little of worth my pen can offer tonight. Another helicopter met its untimely end, a winged beast brought low beneath these melancholy Mediterranean skies, where happy endings are but whispers carried off by the cool sea breeze. I don't know where I'm going with this part, honestly. Look man, the campaign isn't all that interesting, I'm just doing the best I can. In the next mission, you're taking part in an aquatic beach landing, and just after you take off, you're told that the ship you just launched from is sinking. Not that you can look at it though, because your turret doesn't let you turn backwards. And I suspect this is just another trick to keep production time down. So you do the tank section, you dismount, and it's back to shooty shooty bang bang. This is probably a good time to mention that each squad member has a special ability, and you can tell them to do it on a really short cooldown. My favorite was the recon ability that just spots all enemies in the area. Some people might not think that's realistic, but you get one guy in multiplayer with a drone, and it's not unreasonable. This game also doesn't like you going places too soon or too late. Like it'll straight up give you a 5-second countdown if you go 10 meters ahead of the group. And at one point I was right behind my squad mates and it still said I was too far forward. A lot of this mission is just sticking to your friendly Bradley and pocketing it with a repair tool. I said the campaign was basically a multiplayer tutorial, and my god I meant it. Eventually you get to a fancy government building, and this also seems like something they had time to properly work on. Everything inside seems destructible, and cover is constantly being ripped apart around you. The end of this mission is kinda disappointing, because there's a good 45-second cutscene here, and no one has anything interesting to say. I went back and played the OG Modern Warfare games pretty recently, and something I quickly noticed was how much dialogue and characterization they managed to cram into such short windows of time. Those campaigns work so well because you had so much fucking respect for whoever was leading you. Those games love nothing more than demonstrating the sheer competence of your squad. Like there's a scene in Modern Warfare 2 where Soap kills a guy with an ice pick. They didn't have to make him do that, but it just shows how mythical the guys leading you actually are. There was actually a part in the Battlefield 6 campaign where I thought that was going to happen, like I was going to witness a cool takedown, but he just opened fire and got us to break stealth. And yeah, your teammates are kinda goofy when it comes to what they'll do when left on their own, but we'll get to that. In the next mission we find ourselves in Cairo. The objective is to extract some tech guy for intelligence. A lot of this mission is just sneaking through sewers and back alleys while listening to exposition, and it's a whole 11 minutes before you actually kill someone. I know Battlefield campaigns are supposed to be relatively grounded, but I just want some sauce, man. Like, it can be grounded and still interesting. Some of the best military media have pretty mediocre action, but the writing and presentation is just so good that you don't care. Like, my Christmas wish would be for this campaign to be 3 hours long. Like, if you trimmed all the fat and actually polished what was left, there's probably something really fun here. Anyway, we make our way into the compound, find the tech guy, and we're like, hey, champ, I know you're dying, but we really need that intel. The tech guy dies anyway, but apparently his thumb is just as good, so we cut it off and get the fuck out of there. Look, man, I didn't fucking write this. So you end up escaping, and your squad is like, damn, we'd be fucked if that helicopter wanted us dead. Good thing it doesn't. So imagine my surprise when the helicopter comes back just when the mission looks like it's gonna end a little too early. But you know the rule by now, all helicopters are destined to go down. There's also such a funny part in this mission, and it's so much better without the context.
Hey, stay back! That's an order!
Anyway, the magic thumb we find tells us that Pax Armada is planning an attack in New York during a NATO summit. Obviously we can't let that happen, so we go raid the townhouse they're using to set up the attack. This mission is so clearly inspired by the Clean House mission in the Modern Warfare remake, but Jesus, they just did not have the chops to make it land. I feel so fucking bad for the people who worked on this, because they knew this wasn't the standard they wanted. I mean, here's 10 seconds from both missions. So you get to the intel room, and you have a Zoom call with the game's big bad. A real problem in this game is that the philosophical differences between NATO and PAX are never actually explored. It's just all nothing statements that don't lead to anything. Like, sure, maybe NATO is seen to be weak and ineffective, but I don't see the appeal of PAX at all. Like, if fucking Amazon started taking over countries, why the fuck would I support that over literally anything else? Even corrupt governments can pretend they serve people, but a company can't do that. At the start of the game, they forcefully took over a country and publicly assassinated the head of NATO. I know people in real life can quite clearly be convinced to act against their own self-interests, but who in the ever-loving fuck can see PAX as the good guys here? It takes a whole new level of stupid to have people fight and die for Jeff fucking Bezos. Putting all that aside, you then make your way into the subway, where a train carrying a MacGuffin is gonna make terrorism happen. Eventually you just call in a fucking airstrike on Brooklyn Bridge to stop the train. Like, I saw this shot in the trailer, and I thought for sure it was the bad guys doing that. But nope. It's the US Air Force that does that to themselves. Anyway, you make your way through the wreckage to disable the plot device, and at the end, an in-game cutscene plays. At this point, I don't think the game expected me to have a shotgun equipped, because during the cutscene, it behaves like an assault rifle.
It's online, no idea what it's doing. Then just break the shit out of it. Can do.
Anyway, the mission ends with us getting picked up by a helicopter, but you know the rules. There are no happy endings for helicopters. In the next mission, we're off to find the president, because apparently Pax is trying to kill him. You find out the president's holding up on a local fire station, which is oddly really nice. Maybe actual firemen can chime in here, But this place is strangely well put together, right? Anyway, after I spend another 5 whole minutes walking around, we get to the roof to meet up with the president's escape chopper. But once again, we have rules around here. The problem is that PAX have set up drone teams that are preventing the president from moving anywhere. Drones as an enemy type in this game fucking suck. But that's just lore accurate to the real world. The developers actually have them marked on your HUD at all times, presumably because they'd be fucking miserable to fight otherwise. But you eventually track the operators to the historic Endau Arch and just blow it up. You actually blow up a weird amount of historical landmarks in this game, and some parts feel straight out of Team America. Missions in this game are also surprisingly long. This one took me 45 minutes, and it involved another vehicle section, an underground portion, and a face-to-face confrontation with the bad guy. And there's a part where he kills one of your teammates, and I just wish that I could feel anything. But I don't know anything about the guy. Again, I still don't know who either of these people are, or what exactly they're fighting for. Like in Modern Warfare 2, everyone remembers when Ghost is killed. I know people who never played the game who know about that scene. And it's not because you're around him all that often either. In the whole game, you only see him for 6 missions. And in half of those, he's only there for a few minutes. But the stakes were clear. You were betrayed by someone you trusted, and you were thrown away like you were nothing. Like 10 seconds before this scene in Battlefield, it tells you not to go a particular way because it's out of bounds. I was like, oh wow, I wonder if I'm about to get hit in the head from around the corner.
Hey, pal!
It's hard to know if this was the story that the writers actually wanted to tell, or if they just had to fix a bunch of stuff after the implosion of Ridgeline Games. The bad guy's backstory is he was left behind on a mission and eventually got captured, which probably explains the Joker scars. I can only guess that there was supposed to be a flashback mission for how many times it's referenced, but it probably ended up getting cut. The next mission isn't good, so we won't spend too much time on it. It's just a tank mission where you roll through checkpoints and kill other tanks. Recent COD campaigns have been doing open world clear objective kind of shit, and honestly, they're always the worst parts. It's almost as if Battlefield 6 copied the worst parts of Call of Duty and found themselves unable to recreate the good parts. The good news is that the mission has us rescuing a downed chopper pilot, which is just so fucking on brand for this game. Like, this had to have been a running joke among the developers. But speaking of COD's Warzone-ification of its single player missions, the next mission is basically just that. When I can see my playable character riding a goofy four-wheeler in third person, the immersion tends to quickly dissipate. I don't know if that happens to anyone else, but it's hard to convince me that these knuckleheads are saving the world. The first part of the mission is set up as a semi-open world, where you're told to take out a bunch of anti-air defenses. The second part is a section where you use drones to take out the slowest moving convoy you've ever seen. They also tried to put in an emotional moment that really didn't seem to belong there. Your squad mate just keeps firing at a sniper for a little too long, and at first I thought this was just glitched. But then one of your other squad mates comes along, and he's like, "Hey buddy, are you alright?" This was my real-time reaction to this scene.
Yeah, I'm good.
All right. We have our objective to complete. Let's move!
Drop some rounds for you.
Thanks, Lopez. I have to imagine that the writer planned for this to be executed so much better than it was. With that said, this character is a pretty happy-go-lucky kind of guy. Like, he's the one who got shot earlier, and 10 minutes later he's just back to being a chill guy. Maybe this was supposed to be a comment that like PTSD can get to anyone, but it just seemed kind of weird to me. And a few minutes later, another squad mate is like, "Hey, good job dealing with Lopez back there." But they say that shit over the radio, like he can hear you. At the end of the mission, you blow up a dam, and a Levolution thing happens in a cutscene, so good job, you saved the day probably. We now come to the final mission, and the plan is just to take out PAX. See, before now, despite PAX openly attacking military bases, planning terror attacks, and claiming responsibility for the head of NATO getting killed, NATO has never actually declared war. I don't understand it either, but NATO decides to kill the heads of PAX because I guess they can be bothered now. The assault is on a PAX stronghold in Tajikistan. Most of the mission is more of the same stuff. You fight from A to B, destroy something, and move on. Eventually you get inside a bunker, and the game once again just betrays itself whenever it tries to do anything with even a shred of emotional weight.
No distractions. You get the shot, you take it. Copy?
Copy.
Whatever he throws at us up there, remember we still get to choose how it ends.
Eventually you corner the big bad, and he tells you that PAX was actually backed by the CIA. See, America wanted a good enough excuse to keep the NATO alliance together, so it basically rolled all its classic bad guys together to form something big enough to be threatening. The idea is that America tends to thrive in wartime. People are united against a common enemy, military contractors stimulate the economy, and elites use the chaos to consolidate their power. The end goal was for the CIA to put plants in Pax Armada and just control it from the inside. But nothing we see in game ever indicates that America is better off with Pax Armada taking over half the world. It just makes them look weak. It's kind of funny that Russia isn't even mentioned in this game, because them fucking around with Ukraine is what's currently supercharging NATO in real life. I guess the existence of Russia makes it hard for this plot to even work. But Russia was the reason NATO was formed in the first place, and I'd argue that making them the bad guys would have worked way better than the CIA. Just let me cook for a minute. So in the real world, Russia starts its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022 because Putin wants an easy win. But what if instead of doing that, it just supercharged its propaganda arm and got NATO countries to separate on their own, divide and conquer? Like, we know that Russia launches huge campaigns to influence elections in the US and Europe. That's not even a secret. If they can get a nationalist strongman in power who thinks Ukrainian aid is a waste of money, that makes Russia's invasion just a little bit easier. So what if instead of just invading Ukraine like a fucking idiot, Russia used NATO's own democratic systems to split the alliance from the inside? They just radicalize people, fund extremists, and make sure that NATO nations are nice and tied up dealing with their own internal conflicts. Maybe PAX can act as a grassroots militarized movement aimed at taking down elites within their own system. Like, why not make them radicalized insurgents that have grievances that you can relate to? Something like wealth inequality is pretty broadly appealing across the political spectrum, so you can understand why they'd be pushed to a point of violence. Like, maybe Russia figures out how to cause a biblical market crash that acts as the final spark. Like, only a few years ago, if Russia had decided to turn off its oil pipelines overnight, a lot of European countries would have just stopped working. In this instance, when Russia quietly starts taking over its neighbors, no one's there to stop them. And I know this isn't a perfect setup, but it does fix a few problems with the story. It gives a reason for why people would join PAX. It explains why NATO doesn't wipe PAX out immediately. And it also lets NATO keep its credibility. It could be a morally grey war between the flawed but righteous NATO and the oppressed but manipulated PAX rebels. And you could have a no-Russian-style mission storming a NATO summit with a bunch of PAX freedom fighters. I think it would be good to show them as both incredibly human, but tragically misguided. Shit, make it the red wave that NATO was initially formed to fight. But instead of being some glorious cause to free the oppressed worker, it's just Russia stirring shit for their own ends. I just think it would be really cool to see a modern take on the Red Scare. Like, what would the world have to look like to push people that far? But that's just me. But maybe the story was supposed to fill in all these problems, but it was just a victim of the game's cursed development cycle. Again, I don't want to blame the guys who made this, because this obviously wasn't the original vision. But to get back to the vision we got, your squad kills the CIA agent who set you up, the credits roll, and I wish I hadn't wasted my time. Luckily, you can separately uninstall the single player portion after you've finished it, but if you're watching, I assume you never downloaded it in the first place. This whole thing just kind of makes me sad. The developers didn't want this, EA didn't want this, and I can't see too many players who wanted this either. I'm just glad the multiplayer is good. It really seems like we're in something of a dark age when it comes to shooter campaigns, at least when storytelling is concerned, and I really hope we get to see that change. I know they don't let you sell battle passes or get players coming back for 100 hours, but I think there's real value in it. If your friend told you that this was one of the best shooter campaigns of all time, wouldn't you want to play it? I know I would. I want to live to see a first-person military shooter win Game of the Year one day. And I know that's like wanting a superhero movie to win an Oscar, but fuck it, a man can dream. Anyway, that's how I feel about it. Subscribe for more.